Today, I finally get to talk to you about a highly anticipated new addition to the Sennheiser 600 series of headphones, and it's a closeback. What's cracking, everyone? My name is Ryan, and today we are taking a look at the Sennheiser 620S. Now, this is a closed-back dynamic driver headphone from Sennheiser. It retails in at $349.95. And I want to send a big thank you out to Audio 46, who did provide me with the 620S in exchange for all of my thoughts and all of my opinions. And guys, please do check out Audio 46 online. They have a ton of audio products available, as well as a storefront located right in Times Square, New York on 46th Street. Stop on in, get yourself a demo. Tell them Schiit said hi. All right, so diving right into these angled drivers, and they are angled because it goes pretty deep in the cups. It is a 42mm angled transducer that is a 38mm diaphragm. Now, it also has a 150 ohm aluminum voice coil that is going to be a little more harder to drive as far as power goes, but this is 110 dB of sensitivity. So as far as getting volume goes out of this headphone, you can do that with something as simple as an Apple dongle, maybe an orange dongle if you don't like Apple products. That was a bad joke. But you get what I'm saying. It can be given some volume out of something simple, but I do recommend that you get a proper amplifier for this, and I will talk about that as we get further into sound. So I can tell you right away that I really dig the aesthetic of the 620S, and in fact, it's gonna remind you a lot of other Sennheiser series headphones, such as the 560S that I have here. Very similar in design, but this just feels more robust in the build. This is a lighter headphone in general. This is a little bit heavier, but I do notice an uptick in the build quality. And the first thing that you'll notice is that this has a steel reinforced ear cup cover on the outside here and a steel reinforced adjustment slider on the band. Now, this is actually a pretty thick plastic piece here as this adjusts up and down. Bendability wise, you know, you're not going to be very malleable with the headband as far as bending it, but I do find the clamp force to be pretty sufficient here, but it's nothing like the clamp force when I first got the 560S. So I will tell you that I think it's a little better on that front. Also, the pads on the 560S, they're that velour type pad and they kind of smush on the side of your head, whereas on the 620S, these are artificial leather pads and they are cushiony, they are very comfortable, and they don't have that smush effect. And that same goes for the headband up top here. It's got that same artificial leather material that is, I believe, glued onto the band, just so you guys know. But I really dig the aesthetic of this headphone and the fit and comfort. Now, this does suffer from the Sennheiser creak, as I like to call it. 560S. So it is what it is from that standpoint, but I will tell you that clamp force and everything I find to be much better on this headphone than the 560S or even the 6XX that I have sitting behind me here. One thing I would say to note is because these don't have full cup swivel or full cup tilt, fit could be an issue for some people as far as getting a good seal, and that's really going to affect bass response and sound, but these sealed perfectly fine for me. In fact, these are excellent at isolating outside noise. I was listening to music on pretty moderate volume, I would say, and I had Bree, my wife, standing by, and I asked her if she could hear the music playing. She said no, it was dead quiet, and it's dead quiet when I'm playing music with this, even on low volumes. So very good at noise isolation with the headphone. And then lastly, inside the box, pretty basic, but you're gonna get the headphone. You will get the 2.5mm locking cable that is found on something like the 560S that terminates to a 3.5 connection with a 6.3 adapter. However, I do recommend, if you have one already or if you don't, picking up something like a Hart audio cable. Now this is a modular cable and this was 50 bucks and it gives me the option to go balanced or unbalanced out of this headphone and the 560S. I'll link these in the description down below in case you guys want to check them out. All right, I think it's important to understand what I used to drive this headphone because I tried several different things, starting out as simple as my Schiit Magni Unity, which is a DAC amp combo for under 200 bucks. Then I used my Schiit Midgard for the amp paired up to my Unity or my Bifrost 264. Now my Bifrost 264 is the main DAC that I use, and I also paired that up to the IHA-6 from Cayin, as well as the HA-3A, which is a transformer coupled tube amplifier. Now I also tried this out on the DC Elite and the RU7 for more portable dongle solutions to give me a general idea of the sound, and you can definitely get a little bit more out of this headphone when you give it some proper amperage. When you give it some proper power, current, whatever. This does have good bass response. It has good low end. It goes into the sub bass. It gives you some fullness down under. It's not going to be overly rumbly and it's not going to be boomy at all, but that does kind of segue into the mid-range so that there's no muddiness going on there and you get a nice full mid-range that is a touch forward as we go into the upper mid-range. So vocalists and things are going to be pushed towards you, more so female than male. I definitely found that. And then into the treble, you're going to pick up some sibilance and some stabbiness every now and then with this, even compared to something like the 6XX. Now, I think that's a good comparison because the 6XX has a lot of characteristics of this headphone, especially when it comes to the low end. This has more low end, I feel, than the 6XX. The 6XX has a much smoother mid-range, however, and is a little bit more laid back than something like this, and doesn't quite have that stabbiness as something like this. And I feel like the 6XX is a good comparison because this is a kind of natural price step up from that, but the 6XX can scale way the hell up, and this can actually scale a little bit as well when you put it with different amplifiers. First track I want to talk to you guys about is called Wonder Where We Land by Sampha. This track I feel like was made for this headphone and what I'm talking about into that bass response because it has more fullness than most tracks I've heard with this headphone. It actually has slight rumble, it actually has slight boominess, and just completely connected me with this headphone with that track. And that'll happen with different headphones. So I would definitely recommend checking it out, see what I'm talking about, and you kind of get an idea of that type of response. Now, another track I can tell you is a track called Kicks, which is all about kick drums. Not a very fun track to listen to, but it's more of a technical track to listen to understand response into that region. And what I will tell you is with kick drums, you can kind of get that initial kick and then it kind of rolls off and will have that, you know, kind of vibration effect to a kick drum. I don't really get that with this. I get the kick. I definitely get that. Kicks you in the gut. But it rolls off faster. It doesn't maintain quite as well. It doesn't sustain quite as well. I don't know if you want to call that driver excursion, but it just doesn't have that quite as much going on with this headphone, which can be a good thing, or depending on what type of music you like, maybe not so good. And then to talk to you about that mid-range I mentioned, and with vocalists being pushed forward, the track Rise. I love this track. I love her vocals. They are definitely more in your face with this headphone, again, on something compared to like the 6XX. And there's a specific instrument, and I think it's like a woodblock type instrument that you'll hear in this track, and that clicks harder or knocks harder. Like knocks me in the head, I don't know. Just knocks a little bit harder on the right when I'm hearing that through that track than other headphones that I've heard. And that kind of tells you kind of that forwardness, kind of that shoutiness that this will pick up. Norah Jones has some shoutiness to her vocals. This headphone picks up some of that shoutiness. Now, I will tell you that rock music and metal music and things, you may think, oh, that might be a little bit too harsh or fatiguing. It's actually not. It has a nice job of kind of segueing that upper mid-range into the treble to where you get some dips here and there to make it more of a smoother response, I would say. but you are going to get some sibilance at times, and you are going to get some splashiness to cymbals at times. I do find strings to be very pleasant on this, and even though they're a little bit pushed forward at times depending on the string instrument, I think they're represented well. So I think classical music sounds pretty good on this, but I also think this headphone sounds very good with stage music. So live recordings, big stage recordings, and gaming. And man, I cannot recommend this headphone enough for a closed-back $350 headphone that I would recommend for gaming. This is it. This headphone's fantastic for gaming. I have gamed with it, and I think one of the reasons why I like it so much is you do get that nice sub bass out of it that gives you some rumble and things that you can get for your games, for explosions and things like that, but it cuts off enough into that upper bass and mid so it doesn't bleed into that. So it's very clearly heard for imaging to know where things are coming from. And then that pluckiness of the treble will pick up footsteps and things like that. This is fantastic for gaming. And really, that's how I'm gonna kind of end this, is this headphone truly is fantastic in my opinion for $350. I wanna talk about amps really quick again and tell you that I did drive this just fine on the Magni Unity. In fact, if you have a $200 amp, that's a great amp to pair up with this. When you can go a little bit higher and get something that will help out higher impedance headphones, something like the Midgard with that halo effect and going balanced, that helps. But my IHA-6 has a single-ended output of, I believe it's either 100 or 120 ohms. That really thickened up the sound of the mid-range, which I enjoyed, and just gave it a little bit more fullness and more body to it, and got me more connected with the music on this headphone. And tubes can do that as well. So I do think maybe this isn't the scalability of a 6XX, but it can scale and it can definitely take on some characteristics of an amp. So I think this is a fun one to try out with different amplifiers, and I definitely recommend that you guys do that. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If so, please slam that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel and join my Patreon if you'd like to support the channel. I would highly appreciate that, as I am really working to get to 5,000 subscribers by the end of the year. All right, guys, thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one.